Today we're going to divide with decimals in the divisor and the dividend. Now remember, the number in the box is the dividend and the number outside the box is the divisor. Now let's look at rule number one. Rule number one says to move the decimal over in the divisor all the way to the right. So let's do that. Move this guy all the way to the right. Now under rule number two. Rule number two says to move the decimal in the dividend the same number of times you did in the divisor. Now remember, in the divisor we moved it over once, which means in the dividend we need to move it over once as well, so it'll be right there. Next, rule number three says add any zeros if necessary, and don't need to do that. Next, we're on to rule number four, which is rewrite the problem. And when you rewrite the problem, it'll look just like this. Now, under rule number five says we need to bring the decimal up in the dividend, so let's do that right now. And on to rule number six, which says divide. So 5 does not go into 1. 5 goes into 12 twice. 2 times 5 is 10. Subtracting, we get 2. And now we drop our 4. 5 goes into 24 4 times. 5 times 4 is 20. Subtract, we get 4. Now let's look at rule number 7. Rule number 7 says we cannot have a remainder. What we need to do is add a 0 in the dividend and drop it all the way down. And you keep dividing until it goes into it evenly. So 5 goes into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. And as you can see, it goes in evenly, leaving us with an answer of 24.8. Now let's look at another problem. In this one we have 26.7 divided by 0.15. Now remember, the number in the box is the dividend and the number out of the box is the divisor. So let's look at rule number one. Rule number one says we need to move the decimal over in the divisor all the way to the right. So let's do that here. 1, 2 spaces. Rule number two says we need to do the exact same thing to the dividend. We need to move the decimal over in the dividend to the right the same amount of spaces we did to the divisor. Now remember, in our divisor we moved it over twice, so in our dividend we need to move it over twice. 1, 2. We need to add a 0 if necessary, and we need to add a 0 right there. Next thing we need to do is rewrite our problem. So when we rewrite our problem, it'll look exactly like this. And now on to rule 5, or step 5, which says bring up the decimal in the dividend. So let's do that right now. I'll bring that up right there. And step 6 is to divide. Now 15 does not go into 2. 15 goes into 26 once. 1 times 15 is 15. Subtract, and we get 11. And let's drop our 7. Now 15 goes into 117 7 times. 7 times 15 is 105. And subtract, we get 12, and bring down our 0 all the way here. And 15 goes into 128 times. 8 times 15 is 120, so it goes in evenly, leaving us with an answer which is a whole number of 178.